This is the Amateur Fanboy Podcast with your hosts, Chase Aguirre and Mike Hurtaza.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Friday, August 2nd. We're in August. It's my birthday month. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be like a white girl.
Happy birthday, Chase.
It's my birthday month. I'll be 26 and on the 26th. I think that's pretty freaking incredible, actually.
You're probably gonna die now.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna die on my 26th. Yeah, that should be how it goes. But today we are going to be talking about our wide receiver tiers.
Yeah.
There's not really a song to that. I'm sorry, Mike.
It could be like I don't know.
Wide receiver tiers.
Oh, I got chasing today.
Wide receiver tiers.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's our intro. But before we get into that, there was a football game last night.
There was.
The Broncos versus the Falcons. We figured out who was playing outside of the Broncos because I think we said it was the Bills.
Oh, we said the Bills. Well, it might have been the Bills.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all third stringers.
Matt Schaub was playing.
Drew
Lock played terribly. His coach, well, he didn't play terribly, but his coach...
He started off not very well, but he finished strong through the game-winning touchdown.
But he's still a rookie. I mean, he's a second-round quarterback. He isn't expected to start.
There is something, and a lot of people on Twitter were talking about it. I'm not sure what his last name is. Actually, I can't remember his first name. The running back that was playing pretty well could end up becoming part of the backfield in Denver.
I don't know.
Philip Lindsay.
The only thing is Denver just signed Theo Riddick.
And they did.
So
who knows what's going to go on
I don't
there.
expect anything. Theo Riddick's not a very good player. He's good at catching the ball, but his yards after the catch is literally nothing.
Yeah.
He catches the ball and he gets tackled.
Oh, I know. I freaking had him on my fantasy team the last couple of years. He sucks.
Yeah, so...
I don't like him.
Other than that, nothing else has happened. Melvin Gordon, Zeke, or Trent Williams have yet to be signed, traded, or show up.
No.
There was a report today that I saw, I'm not sure how factual it is, but that Zeke may hold out and might go into months. We'll see if that happens.
I don't know where you heard it from, but if you're not hearing it from either Patrick Walker or Mike Fisher or any of those guys, I would take it with a grain of salt. Because especially if it's pro football talk, do not listen to a word that guy says. That dude's a freaking hack. And I'm over him. I don't even know why I'm still following him on Twitter. The dude
he doesn't break news either.
He doesn't break news. He just literally writes shit to hate on the Cowboys.
I like to watch his show. It's not that bad because I
just don't like the guy. I've never liked the guy.
I don't know. He's I give you he's a little bit of a hack, but whatever. Other than that, there isn't too much news. Not that many crazy injuries. Hopefully that stays that way.
Yep.
It seems like teams are really focusing this camp on injury prevention, stuff like that. It looks like teams are spending a lot of time and money and effort to keep players healthier than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, with that, what are we doing?
We're doing our wide receiver tiers.
Man, you got a lot of tiers.
A lot of tiers?
For wide receivers.
Yeah, a lot of tiers.
That was stupid. I guess we'll go into it. This is probably... I don't know, the hardest group outside the top 10 because there's just so many receivers.
At the end of the day, and I know that's your favorite.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
To be fair, no, but
to be fair.
At the end of the day, with most of these receivers, maybe in the top 20, any of them could end up being in the top 5 when it's all said and done. It literally all comes down to who stays healthy, who has big games, who ends up getting hot. It literally, I think Adam Thielen, probably going into last year, nobody considered him much. He ended up being a top 7 receiver. I mean, not much, but everyone probably had Diggs.
He was drafted like the top 20 receiver last season.
But was Diggs not drafted ahead of him last year?
Diggs was drafted ahead of him.
There you go.
Yes.
And now I think it's safe to say this year he will be drafted ahead of Diggs. Yeah. Now, who knows? Diggs could go off this year. I know because I drafted Diggs over Thielen last year and it didn't pay off for me.
The funny thing is, a lot of people had told me, or at least from listening to podcasts, that they were like, go after Thielen. And so people not necessarily listen. It looks like this year, Thielen completely has moved over as the better receiver there.
Oh, I would agree with that, 100%.
But yeah, I agree. There's, a lot of good receivers.
But there is, yeah.
I think there's there's about, I don't know. Probably about 9. Let me see. I'm trying to think. How many, like a tier, like wide receiver ones, it goes pretty far.
I would say,
you could probably end up there's probably 12 good wide receiver ones.
Are you putting Cooper in that group?
No.
Okay.
That's my cutoff was Adam Thielen.
Okay, that's fair.
I think
For right now, that's fair. We'll see how if he can move.
he's a high end number 2 for me at this
fair.
point. And
That's fair.
look, and this is what we go through. I guess we'll start off tier 1. I'll start off. Devontae Adams is my number 1 receiver. He's just so good. And it's crazy. A couple years ago, he was looking like a bust. Mm-hmm. And he completely changed around. He gets a huge contract extension. Now it looks extremely low. But yeah, he's my number 1 receiver. He has Aaron Rodgers. He is basically their best weapon. He has a good offense that he's going to be a part of. And I look, none of these guys I'm going to talk about, they're all really, I feel like they're 1A, 1B, 1C.
100%.
For the tier 1 for me.
I have 9 1A, 1Cs, 1Bs.
I only have 6 tier 1s. I have Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill, Odell Beckham. Those are guys for me that are going to produce at a high level. They're going to come in week out and produce between, they'll average between 15 to 13 points every single week. There's not going to be a bad week unless there's injuries. But that's something that I'm not counting on.
Are you taking Antonio Brown into your tier 1 because he's a Raider now?
Yes. It's nothing to do with Antonio Brown. It's just more of the quarterback, the system that he's in. Look, he's like top tier 2, but I don't think that's wrong. I don't think it's wrong to take him off. And I almost took off Odell just because there's so many weapons in that offense.
I'd rather have Antonio Brown than Odell Beckham right now.
I'm not exactly sure on that take. I would look, if you're looking at injury, sure, I would take AB just based off of he's probably going to stay healthier. Odell, year in year out, has been injured for games or season, but I just know the upside of Odell with a better quarterback than what he's had. We got to think about it. Odell Beckham had Eli Manning his entire career and has still produced as a top 10
As much as I've hated on
receiver.
Eli Manning, he can still throw the ball. I'm not saying Baker Mayfield isn't better than him because he obviously is. But the reason I would take Antonio Brown over Odell is because, first off, Odell has a history of being a diva. He has a history of...
I don't care.
Mike.
This is fantasy.
It doesn't matter. And if you are a diva receiver like that, you can get in your own head and he can go and have games where if he's not getting the ball or this and that,
I just want to point out,
sideways.
You said that Odell's a diva and that's why you wouldn't take him. Antonio Brown is the definition of diva.
Antonio Brown is not. He literally goes on the field and produces every time he is on the field. The only time he did was the last week of last season. Other than that, the dude's a freaking stud. I'm sorry.
That he is a diva, but that's not. I don't think that I'm gonna not draft him because he's a diva.
I am holding to that, and I will take Antonio Brown over Odell Beckham. If I have the choice between taking two of them, I am taking Antonio Brown, 100%. I am not gonna change. I am not gonna take him down a notch just because he's on a different
what's
team.
your tier 1 rankings?
Tier 1 rankings. DeAndre Hopkins, first and foremost. I still think he's the best receiver in the league. Best hands. Deshaun Watson's quarterback. He's great. Devontae Adams is my number 2, only because just with Aaron Rodgers and if he's able to stay healthy. But then on top of that, in Green Bay, it's always a different receiver every week. It's kind of like New Orleans. It's Devontae Adams is still going to have great games. Don't get me wrong. He's still going to be amazing. But DeAndre Hopkins is the guy in Houston. I just don't, for some reason, between Scantling and Geronimo Allison, I just see other guys getting a lot of targets week to week in Green Bay, which I'm still going to take Devontae Adams as one of my top receivers, no doubt. But I still would just take DeAndre Hopkins just above him just because of that fact. And then Michael Thomas, obviously, is the guy in New Orleans. He's a stud. Julio Jones, the main guy in Atlanta. Tyreek Hill still on the field for whatever reason, but I'm still going to take him as a number 1 receiver. And then Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham in whatever order you want to put them. And that's my tier 1.
At last year, Tyreek Hill was ended up the season as the number 1 receiver. Why is he not higher on your list? I mean, he's a tier 1, but why is he towards the top?
For me, I'm a big believer in first off, karma. I'm sorry. I know this is fantasy football talk. I know we don't care. But, like, the dude's already had a couple little injury, whatever, little scares or whatever. I just think someone who is that big of a human piece of shit off the field, just at some point, karma, what comes around goes around, and I would be hesitant to draft him ahead of a few of the other guys on my list. Okay. I would still take him as the number one receiver, but we all know that, Patrick Mahomes may have a sophomore slump as well. He's still in my top.
I'm not
4.
using karma as an excuse to. I mean, there's players. Look, Ray Lewis. I mean, he has an incident where someone died, and he played his whole career not having any issues. I don't think that's something that we should put on why not to take somebody.
Okay, all right.
I think Tyreek Hill. I have him as a tier 1 receiver. I just see. Look, he has a great quarterback. He has a great system. He has produced. I'm just, if I was going to bet on some other guys ahead of him, just because they've done it week in, week out throughout years. So, I don't know. I could see Tyreek Hill end up being as the number one receiver at the end of the year.
I'm not saying he can't, but
really.
there's a few reasons why you should be weary, is all I'm saying.
I understand that.
And there's still Travis Kelce there. There's still Sammy Watkins, who gets some love at times.
I don't think they're going to take anything from him. But that offense is just producing.
Mike, can you understand that I'm not saying that? I'm just saying that there's other guys on that team. There's a lot of weapons for Mahomes to play with. So just be weary is all I'm saying.
Based off of history, we know that Tyreek Hill is the bomb, basically. He's they're just going to toss it down the field, and he's going to get it. I expect that to happen. Something that I would target would be Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, if you could somehow get them together as that one gets a touchdown, they both get a touchdown, just based off of, if it goes to Tyreek Hill. I think that's a great pairing if you can put them together, which is tough because Tyreek Hill is going in the second, and so is Patrick Mahomes.
And I just don't know that I would take him in the second.
Oh, I would for sure. At the back end of the second.
At the back end of the second,
sure. In a 12-team league, even middle of the second. I mean, if there's a run, there's always runs at receivers.
All right.
I would definitely take Tyreek Hill. I know what I'm getting. He was far and away the number one receiver last season.
Okay. All right.
Even better is that the running game is not as productive as it was with Kareem Hunt. And their defense isn't any better. They're gonna have to score points.
Mike, I'm not. For me, I do like my NFL players to not suck as human beings, and I don't want to draft him as my number one receiver for that reason. And if that makes me suck in fantasy, then so be it. But I'm probably not alone in that.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody cares off the field. Like most NFL players don't. The NFL fans don't necessarily care. Like I'm here to win a game on my fantasy game.
All right.
I'm gonna take the best player available. Where do you have him? You still have him in your tier 1. So
I have him in my tier 1, but he's probably one of the last few guys I'm gonna take as at tier 1. I have him right ahead of Antonio Brown and Odell. I'm gonna take Julio. I'm gonna take Julio Jones over him. I'm gonna take Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, and DeAndre Hopkins.
But to me, a number one receiver is 12. There's 12 number one receivers. If there's 12, teams in a league, that's how you take him. He's at least your number 6, at least, right?
Yeah, he's my number 7.
7.
Or sorry, my number 5.
He's gonna produce. Look, I would contemplate who to put over Julio Jones or Tyreek Hill, and I put Julio Jones. But there's an excuse to say Tyreek Hill will end up with more touchdowns than Julio.
That's fine.
Or maybe not DeAndre or Devontae. But he's gonna. I don't know. That's. I think you gotta pull your feelings outside of.
You know
fantasy
what? By
football.
the time the draft happens, I might. But at the end, I just think karma is a thing, and we've seen it happen with We've seen it happen plenty of times with players that have bad histories. So, if he gets hurt in the middle of the year, there you go. Okay. I'm not saying he will, but there you go.
Tier 2. I'm not hoping anything on these guys. I hope they stay healthy and clean and they get better in life. But I
hope he gets better in life too. But that interview after when he first came back wasn't exactly great.
Let's move on.
Anyways.
Tier 2, I have Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, T.Y., Juju, and Adam Thielen. To me, Tier 2 are very upside. They're still number one receivers, but there's some quirk in them the reason why they're not in there. My tier 1, Antonio Brown. I want to see how Derek Carr produces with him. End of the day, that doesn't take anything away against Antonio Brown. It's just I know what Derek Carr has been the past few seasons. Mike Evans, he's probably going to be on that team's going to probably have bad defense. Not the greatest quarterback, but he'll still produce, garbage time points. Ty, I think Ty is somebody that I'm targeting, in the third round, because that is just great value for a player who has a great quarterback, a good defense, somebody who can produce a lot of points if he's healthy. So Juju, I think right now is being overdrafted, and I think you would agree with me.
What?
About Juju.
Yeah, I would agree.
Then I have an Adam Thielen, and if I was gonna pick, which receiver from the Vikings, of course it'd be Adam Thielen at this point. You want to provide me your tier 2?
My tier 2 is Juju, T.Y. Hilton. I keep calling him Ty Hilton. T.Y. Hilton, Keenan Allen, Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, and Stephon Diggs.
So you have Stephon Diggs as your tier 2?
Yeah, I have both Minnesota receivers in my tier 2.
Why do you think he's a tier 2 receiver at this point?
I think that the Minnesota offense is, they're going to need to throw the ball. They're going to run the ball, but they're also going to throw the ball. And I think as long as Diggs and Thielen are both on the field together, they're both going to be top 8, top 9 receivers. I think they're both going to be great.
My thing is, I think tier 2s are number 1 receiver. So you'd be fine with drafting Diggs as your number 1 receiver.
For me, and we've had this conversation a few times, just because a guy's not the number 1 receiver on his team doesn't mean...
I'm talking about fantasy, though.
I know, I understand that, but there's a lot of number 2s on... like Robert Woods is right there with me, or right there as whatever. He's probably a number 2 compared to Brandon Cooks for whatever reason, but he's going to be the best receiver and he's going to get the most points. I just think offenses with a lot of weapons, you take those number 2 guys over some number 1s just because of how potent the offense will be.
You could probably say that Adam Thielen's the number 2 there as well. On the depth chart.
Maybe, but I would put Thielen ahead of him.
As a better player, sure. I don't know. To me, it's tough to put Diggs just because he just doesn't produce as well as he should on the fantasy wise. He's too slip sloppy for me. He'll go have a good 1 week and the next week he'll just disappear. And I want consistency with my number 1 receiver. At least somebody. Well,
I'm not gonna. I'm most likely you're not gonna end up with him as your number 1 receiver.
Sure.
That's why my tier 2 is guys like that, because those are guys that I'd be okay with if I had to take as my number 1 or number 2 receiver. And after that, the amount of guys I've listed go.
You have a lot of people on
that's where I'm at.
Your tiers. I kind of broke them down a little smaller. To me, tier 1s are no question.
You're better than me, right? Go for it.
Tier 2, I'm not saying that. Tier 2 is people who are no question number 1s, and my tier 3 are like low end 1s, high end 2s.
I already told you how I do my tiers. My tier 1 is I like to have a good list of guys in a tier 1 that I would consider drafting in the first couple rounds. Tier 2 are guys that I would draft in the third, fourth rounds, but that you can't account for people that are gonna take people earlier than they should go.
It doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying.
Outside of that,
matters to me. I like to know a good amount of guys that I would consider taking, and not just like 15 guys.
Look, if someone's dumb and takes a player that shouldn't be there, then you're gonna get a player that should be there.
That's what I'm saying, and that's what I account for in my tiers.
So my tier 3, I have Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Robert Woods, Julian Edelman, Stephen Diggs, and Tyler Lockett. These are guys that have very much upside, a lot of upside, but they just don't necessarily produce as well, or the production's not as much as the first couple tiers. Keenan Allen is one that Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Stephen Diggs, those are players that just they don't produce to week in, week out. 1 week they'll have a big game, the next game they disappear.
Are you in your tier 2 or
I'm
tier 3?
on my tier 3 right now.
Okay.
Those are players that will disappear on you. Those are if I had to put them as my number 1, I'm a little more concerned that I might have to take another receiver fairly early right after, just to these guys I'm targeting as my tier 2s. I don't look if I'm stuck with Amari Cooper as my tier 1, I'm probably gonna have issues. So I want to take my receivers in my first 2 tiers. Look, Robert Woods to me could be a tier 1 or not a tier 1, a low end wide receiver 1, but I would prefer him as my wide receiver 2. He's gonna produce week in week out. His production is just not as high as a tier 1 or tier 2, but he's gonna get high amount of targets. He's gonna produce for you every single week. That's the good part. You're gonna be able to feel great with him as your number 2. He's probably, he's somebody I'm targeting as my number 2 receiver. But if for whatever reason the draft just goes the way it does, and he's there, and I didn't draft a receiver first, I would feel fine taking him.
There you go.
You want to go through your tier 3s?
Yeah. My tier 3 is constituted right now is Julian Edelman, AJ Green, even with his injury, Tyler Lockett, Galladay, Chris Godwin from the Bucks, Calvin Ridley, and Cooper Kupp. For me, I put Cooper Kupp and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods in my tier 2 and 3 because I don't trust Brandon Cooks. He's too boom bust for me. I've never been, he's never been a guy I've wanted as one of my top 2 receivers on my team. Moving on, Galladay, look, he's the number 1 target in Detroit. They're going to have to throw the ball as much as they will try to run the ball. I'm sure they will. Doesn't mean he's not going to have a lot of 3rd and 8s where he's throwing the ball. And Kenny Galladay is going to be the benefits of those targets. He's going to get probably anywhere from 6 to 8 receptions a game. Depending on whether he puts up 50, 60 yards and a touchdown or higher is the question. But in a PPR league, I think you're comfortable taking him easily as your number 1 or number 2. Tyler Lockett, again, the number 1 receiver until we see what Metcalf is in Seattle, and we know Russell Wilson loves him. And as long as that's the case, I'm perfectly fine.
I think Tyler Lockett ended up with like a top 10 season last season.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a guy I'm 100% comfortable with taking as my 1 or my 2. And then lastly, Calvin Ridley, I think just like I put with Thielen and Diggs in tier 3, I just think a little bit less of Calvin Ridley to Julio Jones. But again, he's going to get his touchdowns. It all comes down to how many targets he gets a game. So, and then lastly, Tyler Boyd. Look, with AJ Green out, I mean, he's going to, him and AJ Green are about the same right now with AJ Green being out for a few games. I think if Boyd plays 16 games, he has a chance to be a top 20, top 25 receiver and a guy that you would more than likely love to have as your number 2 receiver or maybe not number 1, but number 2 receiver. And then I'll go to my tier 4 while Mike's out handling some business. My tier 4 is Jarvis Landry, Dante Pettis, Marvin Jones, Mike Williams, Corey Davis, and DJ Moore. For me, my tier 4 is more guys that are maybe number 1s on their squads, but I got to see what they can be consistently. I got to see what they can be going on a consistent basis. Jarvis Landry is probably the only one where I'm considered putting him in my tier 3 just because I am a little higher on him than some people, but I think he's easily a number 2 receiver without a doubt, possibly a number 3. And then guys like Marvin Jones and Mike Williams and Corey Davis are guys that I want to see have a bounce back year.
Yeah, my tier 4, my tier's a little bit more broken down into less players. I think you have my tier 4s are your tier. Yeah. My tier 5s are your tier 4s, but tier 4s: Kenny Galladay, AJ Green, Cooper Kupp, and Brandon Cooks. Look, Cooper Kupp. The only reason he's my tier 4, he should be higher, but it's just is coming off an ACL tear. He's a great route runner. I just want to kind of see how he does going back. I don't know if he's gonna start the year as well as he's going to end. I think he ends greatly. So that's something that I'm excited about.
For me, him and Woods have always been 2 of Jared Goff's most reliable and favorite targets.
I think Cooper Kupp's even the better receiver of the 3.
I would say, yeah.
If he's healthy.
Yeah.
And then AJ Green, look, this guy would be, in my tier 2 if it wasn't for his injury right now.
Yeah, I would agree.
And look, he's going to miss.
He would have been one of my last guys in my tier 1.
And I think he was going, before his injury, he was going in the 3rd round, which to me was like, you can get your number 1 receiver in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
Right now, you can get a high upside, like a number 1 receiver as your number 2, but he might miss a couple games at the beginning of the season. But if you are somebody who probably goes really early at the receiver or at the running back position, and you're stuck with a bunch of low end number twos, and he's there, I would take a chance on him and maybe just take someone right after him that you could put in place for a couple weeks.
If you were going on a draft and in the first 3 rounds you had say you had the first pick overall, you take Saquon Barkley, and then it comes back around and you're able to grab say let's say a Julio Jones or a Tyreek Hill on your second round, and then it comes out to the third round and AJ Green's still there.
Not even third. He's going way for later than that. I wouldn't take him in the third just because of his injury, but like he's going in the 4th, 5th round.
I'd be more than comfortable with taking him as my number as the second receiver I'd take off the board.
I would go heavy at running back and then target him. But look, knowing that you have to go target a receiver that you're comfortable with at number, for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So that's where the only question mark is.
My thing is I would take a chance with him, even as taking him as my second receiver, just because I believe I could get another couple receivers that would be good enough depth to where even if AJ Green didn't do what he should do, as long as he's playing the games, it wouldn't hurt me too much. But the only thing that would hurt is if you were to, for some reason, not play much, then that would hurt. But
I mean, it's just the chance of getting a number 1 receiver in your number 2 spot.
If you have a chance to take him in the 4th, 5th round, I think you got to do it.
Yeah. Now, I just want to double check on what his ADP is right now. Yeah, he's going in the 4th round. Look, my only question is, there is some players I might take over him in that pot. In the position, probably Jules.
I would take
Robert Woods, and that's maybe Kenny Golladay.
I would take Golladay
and maybe Tyler Lockett, and after that's probably where I think he's probably going around a little too early. If he was going in the 5th round, I think
I would
be
take him over.
Value.
I would take if I were had to take someone in that between him and Cooks in the 4th round. I would still take him even with his injury.
Yeah, I think Brandon Cooks is still getting overdrafted.
Yeah,
at this point,
100%.
Moving to my tier 5, which is similar to your tier 4. Calvin Ridley, Chris Goodwin, Dante Pettis, Mike Williams, Tyler Boyd, DJ Moore. Look, these guys have a lot of boom bust type of feel to them. They could produce. They could be a top 10 receiver, or they could be a top 30 receiver. Outside the top 30. These are players that just have high upside that I'm targeting as potential number 2s, 3s. I don't know. A lot of drafts I've been getting Dante Pettis as my number 3, but I know he's gonna produce as a number 2, or I think he could be a low end 1 at some point this season.
Homer.
Yeah, of course. And then moving into Chris Goodwin, I think that's Godwin. He's a great player that I'm targeting in a lot of my drafts. I've been taking Chris Godwin and then Dante Pettis right back to back. So I think. Because I like to draft running back heavy, and then going into my number 2 a little further down, getting a lot of upside players.
Right.
So last, I'm just going to run into it. Tier 6, Alshon Jeffrey, Allen Robinson, Christian Kirk, Robbie Anderson, Sammy Watkins, Marvin Jones. Again, these are I'm definitely targeting some players in this. I personally, Alshon Jeffrey, he's a little bit, I'm a little worried about just because there's so many weapons in the Eagles offense, and he has yet to produce as highly as I thought he would going in, there. We'll see what happens if Carson Wentz stays healthy a whole season, if he can get some more touchdowns. For being a big-bodied guy, I was expecting some more red zone targets.
No, yeah, I agree. I once I get to guys like Jeffrey and I can't see the rest of this list right now, so I'm gonna just act like I know something when I don't really know anything. No, I'm fucked. Anyway, but when it gets to guys like, Alshon Jeffrey and some of the other guys Mike listed, not necessarily Dante Pettis, but like those guys, at that point, I just worry about those guys after I've taken most of my team. And I only like to look at, at least from my perspective, I like to look at guys that I'm taking as my number 1 or my number 2s, maybe low end 2s or flex players, but I don't like to worry about the depth on my team until, I get to that point. So that's why I ended on my tier 4, because after my tier 4, those are the guys, like, if I have 2 of those guys on my squad, I'm happy. So, Mike, would you like to join us?
Yes. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Look, I like to target probably a receiver in the second or third round, then I'd wait a while, couple rounds. I kind of build up that running back position just because I know there's a scarcity at that position always, regardless of the fact. There's always, at some point there's it falls off dramatically, and so it's always deep. The receiving position's always been deep. There's gonna be players you're gonna get in the waivers that end up being your number 2, or who knows, even a number 1 at some point this season. So that's why I try to get 6 good running backs and then potentially 5 receivers at the end of my draft.
I would agree. I in the first round, unless I have a late first round, I try to get at least 1 running back to start, and then at least a receiver in the unless a really good running back is there at 2, I'll try to take a receiver in the 2 and then get another one in the 3rd. And then I start, my run on running back or my run on receivers after that in the 4th to 6th round, depending on where they're at. And then sometimes I'll take a tight end if there's a top tight end available there in the 3rd, 4th round to go as one of my receivers. And then after that, I'll just start stacking up running backs. And one of my leagues, it's tougher because a lot of people like to take so many running backs early that I'm stuck with basically either taking essentially a bare minimum running back, but he's a running back in the 4th round, or taking one of the top receivers, and then that's where I get into a conundrum. And that's why I don't like my dad's league as much, because those guys just seem to draft retardedly in it.
I don't know. I like to go deep at
I mean, no, that's fine, but goddamn, I'll get to the 3rd round and put up the running backs right now for me, so I can tell you what I'm dealing with. And you'll say it's normal, and that's fine. But in the 3rd round, if the best running back available is Josh freaking Jacobs, that's a lot of freaking running backs that have been taken, and that's.
I mean, he's going in the 3rd round.
I mean, but that's what I'm saying. People
that's 20 running backs.
But damn, 20 running backs in the first, that's a lot to me. I just feel like more receivers should be going, and
Well, it depends on your settings. Is your dad setting a half point PPR?
It's a half point PPR.
I feel like in that setting you might want to put a full point.
I know that's another thing I think
just
we're gonna bring
to make the receiving core a little more valuable
and get rid of kickers.
And then Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey and Saquon will be your top 3 picks.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that.
I don't know. Regardless of the fact of what other people do, unless there's somebody who's following. If Josh Jacobs is there in the 3rd round and the receiving core is maybe T.Y., sure, I'll take T.Y. over.
But that's what I'm saying, and then I got to decide, and that's probably maybe my second receiver, or my first or second receiver, and then I have to decide between taking my first or second receiver over taking my second running back, and it's
that's something that you just got to keep doing mocks.
Yeah,
that's one thing. Maybe go do a standard league mock where more running backs typically go than a half point or a full point, just to get a feel. But I don't know. I kind of thrive on when people reach.
Well, I like people when they reach, but they'll reach for guys that are I don't know how to describe it, but my dad's league is just different, and it bugs me every year because I always feel like I'm prepared, and then I get a wrench thrown in there every year,
and you're nuts.
I just can never prepare for it. I can do all the mocks, I did a bunch of mocks last year before my draft. Literally, I think I did 20 the night before, and I still wasn't prepared.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll let this one go. Next one, we're going to be going into tight ends.
Yes, sir.
And then, do we do defenses?
We can do.
I don't really care. Yeah. I want to tell you my technique is not to look at don't draft defenses outside the last pick. And, go with somebody who, look at matchups for week 1. I'm only looking week 1.
Yeah. I'd agree
with that. We'll end the pod. Have a good one. Bye.